Welcome everybody to the inaugural Business of Wellbeing Week put on by the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship here at George Mason University. I'm David Miller, Executive Director of the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. We're excited to have you. Got a great session today. It's our second session of the day. We started in the morning, some of us over at a farm here in Fairfax County, Virginia, looking at place-based well-being a bit and food production and physical well-being. For those who don't know, the business of well-being is a $4.5 trillion marketplace, and that ranges from businesses and services that focus on emotional and spiritual well-being, things that focus on physical and place-based well-being, as well as social, financial, and occupational well-being. Today, we're incredibly fortunate to have a Mason alumni, Jimmy Martin, who's a co-founder of Brrrn. And he's going to tell you a little bit about his story, and we're going to have a Q&A, a little bit about his path towards entrepreneurship and what it's like being in the business of well-being over the last few years, and then in particular the last 12 months. So with that, I want to turn it over to Jimmy and welcome Jimmy here and ask him to just tell us a little bit about himself, kind of when he went to Mason and how he started on this path.
Amazing. David, very, very good to see you again. Nicole, very nice to meet you, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I know that my name on Zoom is Rachel. That's my wife's first name. I was having a hard time changing it for Zoom issues, but I actually feel it's an honor to be called my wife's first name. So I'm gonna keep it here. But anyway, yeah, as David said, my name is Jimmy Martin. I'm from Pennsylvania originally, the Scranton Wilkes-Barre area of Pennsylvania. I was fortunate to go to George Mason from 2003 to 2007. I was very active at the school. First and foremost was there as a scholarship student athlete. Got to wrestle from 2003 to 2007 on the varsity team. But it didn't just stop there. Was heavily involved at the university level, was a Mason ambassador for 4 years. So I got to learn how to walk backwards comfortably in public. I also was involved with a few other programs, was one of the sort of the pioneer team for it was called the Launchpad podcast when iTunes University was introduced at George Mason. I was very fortunate to have the university's first podcast. And got my first credit card at Bank of America, right there, at the university where I guess now where Orange Theory now is. But anyway, had a very interesting experience at Mason. And what really sort of brought me to where I am today was having taken a class at Mason because I had a business minor and a major in communication, was an entrepreneurship class, and was fortunate to have won that competition with my classmates. And that kind of sparked my interest into getting where I am today. So again, Mason's at the foundation of how I sort of got my interest in being a fitness entrepreneur here in New York City. And I'm really excited to sort of speak more about, sort of the business of physical well-being with you guys today. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And if people have questions, they can put it in the chat box, obviously, and Nicole will kind of work through them and organize them. So you graduated from Mason and you did a lot. Obviously, you said what your majors were and, podcasting in the early days. Some of our guests probably don't know what we're talking about, but
right, yeah.
But I still remember when they launched iTunes University and Podcast University. And so communications was a theme, and that I'm guessing is going to come up a little later. So when you did graduate, though, you left, you went to New York. Were you ready to start a business? What happened at that point?
Yeah. So what was funny is like, as soon as when we won the competition, the entrepreneurship competition, I remember the professor had said, "Hey, I think you should really think about pursuing this." And I had let her know, "Oh no, I'm going to move to New York to be a writer and performer." And she was like, okay, cool. Awesome. So that was sort of the thing, I had done theater in high school. I was really inspired by by a professor in the communication department who was the sort of the head of the forensics team. And I just knew that, that I wanted to sort of explore, how to potentially get on a late night comedy show like SNL or, Jimmy Fallon as a writer performer. So Prior to moving to New York in 2009, I was very fortunate to work in athletic administration at Mason under the tutelage of Nina Rogers, who's an athletic administrator at Mason currently. She's been there for quite some time, but she allowed me to be like sort of like her executive assistant while I was auditioning for gigs in DC. I was doing community theater, and I was very fortunate to land a gig as a understudy and ensemble performer for this show called History Boys, which had just left Broadway in 2007 and was now in the regional theater circuit in 2008. So I'd done that and got involved in, that whole game of auditioning for films and theater, and was able to get into the unions pretty quickly, which is an honor, SAG-AFTRA, Equity, and decided to make the trip up to New York in 2009. And really, my sights were focused on trying to get on, again, one of those late night comedy shows. And I did every job under the roof you could think of. I worked at GNC. I passed out New York Times newspapers on the streets at 6 a.m. Then would go to a gym and I was a private trainer and worked on the corporate level for quite some time. Brief stint as a nude art model, which my parents weren't happy with. I mean, I remember vividly the first year of me being in New York, my father asking me, you realize that, you get that people get dressed to go to work and you get undressed to go to work. How does it make you feel? And I'm like, hey, it pays cash and it's paying, footing the bill right now. So did a lot of things that I guess you would consider to put on your life resume, but all those things really helped to inspire what had happened with what I'm doing now at the studio level in boutique fitness. But got to work as a copywriter and a greeting card writer because of having done improv and sketch comedy classes at the Upright Citizens Brigade. That led to me getting on Saturday Night Live. I was a background performer and working my way to be a writer's assistant on that show. So the dream was starting to come true. But then this idea of fitness kind of came into my ear when I was training a private client at the time. And she was just singing praises about the benefits of cool temperatures as it parlayed to exercise performance and calorie expenditure. And I knew as a wrestler, oh man, if you're not sweating, you're not working out. And I was completely debunked when the science spoke to me and said it was the complete opposite. So decided to focus on creating this brand, which was called Brrrn, purposely spelled BRRN. Looking back, probably would do away with another R because it's impossible to spell for most people. But the point is we wanted to improve the workout environment, which at that time there was around 38,000 fitness centers in the country, and 0 were focusing on exercise below 72 degrees Fahrenheit. And so I set my sights on sort of nurturing that idea. And what really was my, as they say in storytelling, my inciting incident was my wife at the time, who I met at Mason. She was a student athlete as well, member of the rowing team. She had been diagnosed with cancer September of 2013, and I was her caregiver for as long as she was able to fight the disease. And unfortunately, she lost her life to it May 12th of 2014. So being a 29-year-old widower, figuring my life out, living at my parents' house for the few months to kind of understand this new norm, fitness was what brought me back to life. And I knew that the Brrrn concept, which was my wife's dying wish to make happen, was something that was going to be my full-time focus. And I wanted to create a platform for people to sort of experience something uncomfortable and come out on the other side better for it. So July of 2014, I came back to New York. I was fortunate to meet my business partner, Johnny, who was a former public health official for Mayor Bloomberg's obesity task force. I told him about this idea. He's like, let's do this. We did a trial in a beer fridge in Brooklyn, an ice factory in Pennsylvania. Got our first investor, who was a former client of mine, and had 300 failed pitches and learned a lot from those failed pitches, both in person and also on the phone. This is pre-Zoom. And was able to distill what our unique selling point was in the market. And after the 300 failed pitches, we got our first yes, and was able to raise $1.5 million and set up shop in the most competitive neighborhood in the world for fitness, which is the Chelsea Flatiron area in Manhattan. And so to sort of wrap up the story, we launched, we got probably the best press you could ask for a brand in the first 20 months, had close to 40,000 people walk through our doors, were asked to expand our concept both domestically, internationally, and then COVID happens. And we had no choice but to figure out how we could be able to still be in business when we were told by the state that we couldn't run our business.
So, that you took us from Mason to COVID and, a lot of things in there, a lot of different jobs, a lot of big events in your life, discoveries, focus. Tell me, that just to back it up, because we have some students on here, that period when you left Mason and, you were chasing the dream you talked about and kind of the hustle, you might call it.
Yeah.
Were there any major lessons, and even, including Mason, because I picked up the theme that you were an ambassador, right? That you did podcasts, and that's communication. And then you're in New York doing copywriting and theater. And like we're doing a promo for tomorrow, it looks like.
Yes.
Yeah. Those are a couple of themes I picked. Is there anything that, even looking back on that period of time to get to the launch of Brrrn that, other themes you might point out to some people that even as you reflected over the years?
Yeah, absolutely, David. So, for the longest time, I thought doing a lot of things was a bad thing. And I almost see it as something that is an absolute necessity in order to really find your footing. I knew that I had a passion for people. I knew that I wanted to be able to communicate my ideas in a collaborative setting. I just didn't know what that setting was going to be. I thought it was going to be in comedy, and it was until it wasn't. And I tried to involve myself in a lot of different things. And I felt like by doing so, I was able to sort of understand different types of people and how they were able to communicate what their passions were. And I feel like that's a big lesson. And if I just was a student athlete and limited my experience to just what I had on the wrestling mat, I don't think I would have been able to really find what would become not just my passion, but my profession today. So I think the biggest lesson that I learned was you kind of just have to put yourself out there and try a bunch of different things, especially when you have the opportunity to do so and to make mistakes, and to, making mistakes is a way to make progress. And I found that every which way I could interact with the university was going to be meaningful. So I was very fortunate, not just in my 4 years at Mason to kind of find my footing, but then 2 years after to really test out this hypothesis that I had was like, okay, I think the first path is going to be, comedy. And all the while, underneath my nose was this, my background in fitness, which would then help me, sort of have these conversations with investors later on, because I was a former D1 athlete. So yeah, so short story long, I learned it was very important for me to learn how to communicate verbally, to be able to be concise and to the point with the written word, to be able to, do improv shortly after college, so that I knew what it liked to not either get a laugh or to sort of be comfortable with being uncomfortable in public situations, and really being around a diverse set of people, which at that time we were the most diverse university in the country. I believe it was like 2006. We had gotten that nod from U.S. News World Report. So it was very important for me to know that if I was moving to New York, there's a different pace than what I was used to in Manhattan, but the resiliency and the passion to be around a bunch of different people so I can find my footing was definitely inspired by my time at Mason.
And I think another thing I'm hearing, even when I think about it, because you and I have spoken a couple times and exchanged messages, even the connection to performance, art, comedy, that is right. That's well-being. You're making people happy. Right. They're emotional. That's social, because people come together in a club to listen or sit around the TV to watch SNL.
That's right.
And the reason I'm bringing it up is, that's the theme of this week. But just remember, any business exists for its customers, right? And so when we're thinking about the well-being, it's what are customers looking for to feel better, to thrive, to get that laugh out, to find a great way to enjoy their family and friends for an evening, or, feel stronger or feel relief after they work out with you. So that's just a theme. And I would just challenge people, to think about that when they're looking at what they do. Is there a well-being impact that helps people in one of these 6 areas we focus on, or some other way to frame it? Because it's that's what'll bring you success. And obviously, one of the things I'm guessing is you started training to make money to help fulfill the dream. And then though you're talking to people. So again, you're engaging people, and we, talk about that, I think, as a lesson, just sharing with people what you're looking for, what you're working on, if it's the cold temperature, if it's the comedy, whatever it is. How does that work for you?
Yeah, there's this misconception, especially in people who are pursuing something in the arts, that you have to have all this time in order to be able to audition for something, to create writing samples. I found the opposite to be true. By being a private trainer, by passing out newspapers to busy, angry New Yorkers first thing in the morning, I found different ways to interact with the people that I would one day share my work with, whether it be comedy or my philosophies around exercise. So I found it was like any opportunity that I got to have a job to sell myself was going to just put me one step ahead. So I think there's a frustration and also an insistency on getting your dream job on that first, the first time you apply for one. And I think it's so important to find out what a bad job feels like before you realize what a great job is. And if it's a job that you create for yourself, fantastic, but just know it takes time. It's people invest in people at the end of the day. That was the biggest lesson that I learned when actually raising money to make my dream a reality. And by the way, when your dream becomes a reality, that's when the work begins. It's all fun in your head when you're like, oh, it could be this and it could be that. But when you're working with other people's money, and there's an expectation on return on investment, and to know what you're to make sure that they're living up to the promise that you gave them. That could break some people. So it's important to make sure that you know how to balance all these things at once. And I found like I was able to really manage my stress and to manage my expectations with other people by doing all these other jobs before the real one came my way.
Great. And I hope, other people were taking notes like I was right there, because I heard 2 keepers, right? As people invest in people, right? That is just the truth. I hope people heard that. Yes, you need a great idea and concept, but they're going to look at you and your team and make that judgment. And I think the other thing is, right, you said when your dream is realized, that's when the hard work actually begins, right? When you get that funding, when you make that team, when you get that job, whatever it is, it's that day one when you're like, oh my gosh, now I actually have to do this, right? I sold everybody, and now we've got to execute. So you're in New York, and it's great that you Pennsylvania to DC to New York, like you said, you're in the fast lane at this point. And as you mentioned, Chelsea, I've spent some time up there the last few years. It is the hotbed of fitness on the East Coast, at least. LA may be on the West Coast, but the density of that neighborhood Jimmy's talking about, where I've been up there, every other retail is some kind of gym. And it's private new ones like Brrrn that are just like, whoa, what's that thing? And so talk a little bit about that. You're in this huge market, which we keep repeating to people, $4.5 trillion. Fitness is massive, and it's everything from gym memberships to hardware to software to equipment to apparel and shoes. And so when you're in this market, you're looking at everything. And I'm guessing you're working at somebody else's gym as a trainer. How are you sorting through your head? Where do I go in well-being? How do I differentiate? What can I offer that's different from, the 1,000 other trainers in this neighborhood who are all good looking? I mean, I've been there. It's like you walk around, you're like, what is going on?
I know. Yeah.
How did you find that? How did you discover, you talked about a little research on cold. How did that evolve?
Yeah. I mean, the place I wanted to start at was if I was creating something from nothing that was absolutely new to the market. I believe that your job as an innovator is to improve the systems of your predecessors. So I knew that I had firsthand experience as an athlete that trained in the heat, that had this misconception that a hot and sweaty workout was a great workout. Now, don't get me wrong. When you're drenched in sweat, there's this euphoric, feeling that is unmatched. But as it pertained to debunking myths of the past, I had to find a unique way to tell that story, right? So coming from my background as a wrestler really did help, you know, understanding what, you know, the misconceptions of what cold meant, in terms of like just sort of the socio-cultural aspects, how cold has always been seen as an enemy, not an ally. But as of recent, you know, with the Wim Hof movement and cold showers and plunges and how it's good for your skin and your hair and just your immune system, you know, there was some leverage there. Again, it was budding research at the time, and now it's just like it's one with popular culture. But what I found to be extremely valuable was I wanted to make sure that I practiced what I preached. I'm a big fan of the cold. I was a winter sport athlete. I remember enjoying those early morning runs more than the sort of hot, sweaty sauna-like rooms. So with what you're creating, those that invest in you, whether it's your customers or literally your investors, they want to know that that you're behind this and that you're all about this. And people can sense when you're just putting on a hat. And as a performer, I've done just roles for sake of roles, and it's very obvious, you know, how much, you know, your level of investment in the job that you're asked to do. So it was important to, one, believe in it so that I can imbue that passion in those who would stand alongside me, be it customers or investors. And I also knew that running away from the competition wasn't the way to stand out, right? A lot of times people are like, oh, I'll do this thing that not a lot of people are doing, and it's in a very unsaturated market, and that's the appeal. I'm like, lean in. If we were going to stand out, I knew as an athlete that I'm only as good as the people that I'm in the practice room with, right? I will rise to the level of my competition, and I didn't really see. I call them our neighbors because as you mentioned, it's like it almost feels like a movie set here, or at least it did prior to COVID, where there was like 300 studios within a 4-block radius. Peloton's headquarters was, you know, like on 23rd Street, like 2 blocks down, which I know you spent a lot of time of, and then Rumble and then SoulCycle, they're all around us. So how do you get people to make the decision to come to your place one time, right? And we had to just find our way with our narrative. You know, I always, you know, having a background in comedy, I find that people take fitness very, very seriously, right? To a point where they don't leave room to kind of make fun of all the things that you observe while you're pursuing this. I mean, to be quite honest, living better has become a popularity contest, and I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to joke about that. So you know, my copywriting background and which is sort of threaded with the comedy, I was very fortunate to not have to really hire an ad agency. I was the ad agency, and I wanted to talk about fitness without talking about fitness. You know, little things like, we keep it 50 so you can keep it 100. You know, that whole sort of, you know, tech speak, or, you know, we're cool because the thermostat says so, which, you know, that tongue-in-cheek humor is fine if you read it. I can tell you quite honestly, puns will get you business, but you'll lose all your friends in the process, especially if you verbalize those puns. But back to your point, you know, finding real estate in New York, we were lucky to find this spot. Ground floor, 3,000 square feet, you know, former beer and cheese, you know, business that went under. And we were like, wow, this is where the journey begins. And so, you know, it started with trying to figure out how we can make a dent in this market. And I really believe the novelty of our concept really worked to our advantage, because we got in the New York Times twice within 6 months. And it was just like, and then Live with Kelly and Ryan, and then we went from 2,000 followers to like 20,000 followers almost overnight.
And we talk about it, you know, in a lot of our classes and with our programs about earned media and the value of earned media, meaning not that you had to pay for it. New York Times, you know, for lack of a better word, influencers. Those are traditional media outlets. Real briefly, you know, just tell us, because it's another thing we're always pushing, you know, kind of just start doing things, try it. You mentioned testing in a beer cooler.
Yeah.
Tell us briefly about that, kind of that moment where you and your partner just said, here's how it's going to happen, and just share that if you don't mind.
This is where the odd jobs worked to my advantage, because I passed out those AM New York newspapers with this guy that was now the creative director for 6 Point Brewery in Red Hook, Brooklyn. And I was like, I know this is crazy, but I'm doing this like refrigerated workout concept. I don't know of any place to like test this out with my business partner. Do you mind if like him and I go into your 10-foot by 10-foot fridge and do some like, you know, kettlebell swings and resistance band curls and rowing? He's like, yeah, man, as long as you sign a liability waiver, we're cool. And so I filmed it because, you know, I was filming sketches and doing all this stuff. So I filmed this like trailer to the movie, so to speak. And that became, and then the next sort of trial and error was in an ice factory in my hometown. It was a summer job that I had, putting ice on a pallet. And so I asked my family friend, hey, could I film and conduct some classes in here? And again, liability waiver. And we filmed that. And then we put those things together. And that was like like I said, our trailer to our quote unquote movie. And that dynamic piece really helped sell beyond a deck, right? Like having like a very short 1-minute teaser about here's who we are, and and basically asking whomever in that competition if they would join us. Like it allowed for a better conversation to be had. So yeah, if we were a science-driven brand, we had to do science on our own, but aside from all this third-party research. So I was very fortunate to share this idea with someone that was my complete opposite in terms of my skill sets. And he led the testing. I think that's super important too. If I could just put a button at the end of this, is that a lot of people are afraid to share their ideas with people because like, oh, it's my concept. I can tell you right now, it will be your concept and it will never happen, right? Like if you're not willing to have this collaborative mentality, I find that if you're not, the best business partners are the ones that like literally fill the gaps for you. And I say that as in like your weaknesses are their strengths. And I couldn't have done this by myself. And I'm so grateful that Johnny Adamick, my co-founder, helped turn this into a reality by having this dreamer, ideation-minded person like myself put it into actions and to set us up for success.
Excellent. And so many things in there. That last one I'll just repeat because I've learned that. I'm sure when you're teaching classes, you got to repeat instructions over and over. People
That's right.
don't remember. But yeah, partner, right? You're a team. Not one person can't do everything on a team. So you need to find people who fill that gap. Even your story about, starting in a beer cooler at a brewery and then home at an ice factory. And, we were just, talking in our other class, I had a class before this earlier today where we were talking about minimum viable products and tests and just showing people. And that's exactly what you guys were doing, just showing them this concept and bringing them in. So maybe bring us to that where you are training people and you're sharing the idea, right? You want to share it with people, right? That's one of our big lines, get out of the building. You got to get it out there. And you're kind of pitching or sharing with clients. How did that work?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's to a point where it was so annoying. They actually told me, I'd rather you pitch me those bad jokes that you used to tell versus this business idea. Cause I was just trying to get feelers out there. Like, I was so fortunate as a private trainer, walking around with equipment, resistance bands, a slide board, which we'll talk later about because that's sort of our focus now. But, and just like testing it out like a scientist, right? Like seeing how they felt about this, whether it was taglines or like the workout methodology. I never stopped testing this, even to the point where we got our check to begin this process. We are constantly revising. And I knew as a copywriter and as also someone that's written scripts and sold movie ideas, things aren't done on the first draft. Like, don't be afraid to you're gonna kill your darlings, as they say. Like, don't be afraid to do that. Things get better in the revisions. Now, there's a certain point where you can overthink things, but luckily, I had a business partner who almost, we did this like Socratic method where we both came with two different truths and then found our way at a middle ground. And whatever we found our way at together was what we put, that was sort of locked in. So constantly testing, getting feedback. People who give you feedback, people love telling people how they feel about things. So if you like open the door for someone to give you constructive criticism, oh my gosh, it's such a blessing. And just don't take it personally. If you're asking them, it's because you really do care about what people think, and that's a good place to start.
Excellent. So tell us, you've got all this feedback, and then someone says, you know what, that sounds great. Tell us how, the funding went, and then you opened, and you, like you said, you were successful. People are coming. I do have to ask one question. I've been wondering, were your energy bills huge? Right? If you're cooling this place to 50 degrees, I just have to ask that operational side, right?
Yeah, no. That was a huge question.
And operations, and then COVID.
Yeah. So the good thing about having two people, one who was a creative director for a beer company and the other one who was a family friend, who had basically had an ice factory. I was asking them about their HVAC systems, humidification, energy costs, if they had sort of an eco-friendly angle, which they didn't. So luckily, when we got one of our investors, who was also a GC who built the first 12 Soul Cycles in Manhattan, he was a former semi-pro hockey player. And we were talking about energy efficiency and how that's super important to us and also extremely important to the type of clientele that we would be seeking. And we found a way, we spent about 6-7 months trying to figure out a way to create almost a geo-cooling system where the refrigerated air in our fridge, which by the way, it's 50 degrees, it's like 18 degrees cooler than what most temps are set at in office places. We found a way to recycle the air into our space here. And the truth is that our electric bills were the same that you would expect a 3,000 square foot, co-working space to be. And actually what was higher for us was the heat in the wintertime. So we found a way, and that's part of the patented technology that we have with that fridge is how we're able to be energy efficient. So yeah, that was definitely something that we had to keep top of mind before we even began building this process, which I'm going to turn it over here so you can kind of see my perspective. See this fridge right there, that fridge door? That was our Instagram showpiece with it. So you're walking right into, you go, oh my gosh, this like crazy fridge. But again, talking to electrical, civil, environmental engineers that helped us make sure that the first time that we put this thing together, it would be the right thing.
Which is great. And I'm sure, I'm guessing you've been asked that a million times, but it's just an obvious one that, yes, whether you have a PhD or not, you still have to ask. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Right. I've seen pictures and you showed us like it was built out right in Manhattan. Tell us about when it opened, how that went with, selling classes in that market, and then kind of that moment the world changed for everybody.
Yeah. So, May 1st, and this is the thing too, with whether you're creating an app or, a brick and mortar business or a D2C company, free 99 is the best price, right? at the start, if you want to get attention. So we did a press class. We did a bunch of family and friends stuff. We, again, constantly revising. When I worked on SNL, the show, there's a show before the live show, and it's actually about 30 to 45 minutes, about 35 minutes longer than the regular show, because they have far more sketches, far more weekend update jokes, and they are literally editing that show 30 minutes before you see it live. And it's fascinating. So I knew that we could still make some changes, and we made some significant changes within, our sort of, what we called our previews week, which was kind of pays homage to Broadway. You have a preview before you have the opening night. So we did previews and changed a few things and got to see and had the sort of start and finish for our front desk team and for our instructors to have it be in their bodies before it was really live. And when it was live, I mean, we did a lot of buy one, get ones. We were under market, the typical class was $36 a class. We were around 28. We decided to go on ClassPass, which, at that time we didn't know how much they would take away from our business, as well as all of our other neighbors here in the area. And they actually ended up hurting us more than they helped us. But, you learn as you go. We made some mistakes. We had way too many plants in the front that all died because people didn't water them in time. All the little tribulations of customer service and people management, which you don't know until you actually do it. So you learn as you go. But I realized that, letting the people that you hire do their job will help prompt them to do their best work. So as we were going along and getting this press and really, getting closer to being a stabilized business within the first year of our company. And by the way, I'll disclose it here, our rent was $24,000 a month. So you're starting at that point. So you have that plus competitive pay, which.
Right. So did everybody catch that? $24,000 a month just for the rent?
Just for the rent. Yep.
And the class was list price 28, but we were doing 2-for-1s and class passes. For people who don't know, class pass is almost like an Expedia for fitness clubs where they'll sell off inventory. So 28 may really only be 12, 14, who knows?
Or 10, yeah.
Right. He could tell us, but So
Yep.
think about that. 24,000, but your revenue may be $10 per unit. That's in 30 days. So run those numbers in your head. How many you got to sell? That's with no other cost.
That's right. And you have you have OpEx, you have your front desk team, you have your instructors who are, because of the standards of like Soul Cycle and Peloton and Rumble and all these other, it's a pretty penny to get top-notch talent. So I was very fortunate to hire peers of mine from the personal training world, and then some people who I, stalked on Instagram, and then politely asked to have an interview with me, and really just gave people chances. A lot of people who never taught Group X before, who I knew would be hungry to sort of learn on the go and had that potential. So yeah, all that, and then again, insurance. It was a lot, and we weren't making money the first few months, but then, the sort of earned media, the Live with Kelly and Ryan's and all the other, People Magazine and Well and Good and Men's Health, Women's Health, it just, pun intended, was a snowball effect. And we were extremely relevant in the summertime. Absolutely, our indoor temperature matched our outdoor temperature in the fall. We were all about winter, spring, same thing, summer, rinse, repeat. So we were a business that was relevant in all seasons, which was great, But as we were going in 2019, a lot of people were remarking upon this one thing that we did in our class. Because we had like 28 people in our class, which is small compared to like cycling studios and other places. But we had this class that involved a slide board, which, if you're not familiar, think of a yoga mat that's sort of made from recycled rubber and plastic, and you put booties over your shoes and you slide back and forth like you're a speed skater. It was very popular in the 90s, but because of the quality of the slide boards, it kind of went away with the 90s. But we had partnered with a company that made all of the slide boards for the professional, collegiate, Olympic level athletes, and we customized our own board, which we called our Brrrn board, which is a sort of a 5 to 6 foot adjustable board. Again, very popular in hockey and also in the 3 arenas that I just mentioned. But people were asking us in our class, they're like, hey, I love the temperature, but man, what is this slider board thing? They're like, can I buy one for my home? And we kept getting that question time and time again. And if anything, in terms of like new verticals to explore with your business, listen to your customers, because we were ignoring it at first. But then after like the 100th, inquiry about this, we're like, man, do we have an opportunity to do something to do something with the business that is independent of temperature? And I was like, I found a pun to sort of like thread it together. I was like, the sort of slide board experience is going to give people goosebumps, but in a different way. So we were cultivating this idea of like a burn at home experience that was independent of temperature. That was all about our programming that you would get in our studio, but on this board and off this board. And we were working with a design firm to make a smart board and other technology surrounding that. And then in March of 2020, everything stopped and we were mandated closed. And the decision had to be made. Do we grieve the loss of who we were, or do we literally make a lateral move and accelerate something that we already had in process months prior?
So, and this was interesting, right? When we talked, you were moving that way. Slide boards, like you mentioned, a bit around. I mean, right after, Jimmy and I are joking, but we've started talking, and now I'm seeing his products everywhere in my world, in the kind of niche world that my family participates in. His brand, his partners are everywhere. But you were saying, and this is where it's interesting, you had a high tech board going with.
Yeah.
That, but that is not what you're focused on. Once COVID hit, talk about that, and then kind of how production and really pivoting very quickly.
Absolutely. So as you referenced, what's your minimum viable product? We're like, okay, slide boards are still unknown. There's not a high TAM with slide boards, right? So it's like, what is this thing? Is it bad for my knees? Am I going to fall? Like, there was still an education component that we had to literally get people on board. And I was like, do we really want to go into the crowded connected fitness market, or do we want to own low tech, right? And I had to the conversation with our investors and say, hey, look, Brrrn is a purveyor of cool experiences, whether it's temperature or whether it's this, sort of the Brrrn board experience. So let's own the low, right? Let's come in at a price point that is literally a fifth or sixth the price of what people would expect with at-home fitness. there was a proof in the pudding with how, with the success of Peloton, which David, you perfectly articulated in your book, which I can't wait to read. And we knew that we had an opportunity to do this thing, but it wasn't going to happen if we were selling an $800 piece of equipment that nobody's ever known about. So we leaned into that. We said, the best workout that you'd never heard of, right? And that piqued curiosity. And then we went simple. We were like, hey, why create something other than the thing that we've been used to? Like we had tested this Brrrn board experience with over 40,000 people and never had to replace one board, never had any fall, no injuries. Like that was a huge proof point that we're like, let's just lean into that. So we did. And we partnered with a gentleman who became our COO to help us understand D2C and supply chain logistics, which was completely a new learning curve. But again, going back to the business partner thing, my business partner had uprooted and moved to Minnesota because he had a young baby and his wife, and they were immune compromised. So they moved with their in-laws in Minnesota. I stayed put in Brooklyn, and we divided and conquered. Johnny did the back end stuff, got all the sort of partners, all the sort of supply chain logistics, all the back end Excel sheet oriented things he did. And I was here in Manhattan. I made sure that I had instructors nearby. I put together programming, and we filmed 200 videos in a month with our instructors, and just to get things rocking and rolling for a July 1st launch of last year.
And again, lots in there. This is being recorded, and we'll post it because you heard minimal viable product. You heard, he's mentioned Peloton, and those who know, I have this research coming out, and that's where the market's pulling everybody. I mean, everybody. You read all the fundraising that's been going on in fitness the last 18 months, and especially the last 12 months. And so I'm sure you could have raised money and spent time developing, but instead, as he pointed out, they had real customer data that people wanted and didn't, wanted to buy them. The product worked. And so that's the thing to remember, that, a lot of these markets in well-being are diverse and deep. And just because a lot of the spotlight is in one place doesn't mean there's not opportunity at all levels. And
Absolutely.
So that's been interesting to watch. And I think it is well-being in general, like a lot of consumer-oriented things. Now people are sampling, let's say, where they'll have some really high-end stuff and some low end and some moderate, and it's whatever works for them. So it's easy to have an expensive, woodway treadmill for $10,000, but then at the same time have a slide board, have a beach cruiser for $400 that you ride to town to get movement. It's a composite now, and your team, I think, right, has found a good segment that you can grow yourself. So that's been fascinating. And then I saw James, some people are blown away by how many videos you produce.
Oh yeah, I can explain how that happened. I mean, look.
And I want to tell people, think about it, right? Podcast, SNL, right? It didn't just come out of nowhere. Jimmy, and I'm sure other colleagues in New York, had this kind of experience in production. So yeah, tell us how that.
Absolutely. And I'll never do this again, but I remember I was, a series that I sold to a network that never got produced. That happens a lot as a budding writer. You sell something, you option something, it never sees the light of day. But we filmed about 20 pages of script in one day, which is a full day shoot, which I'll never do again. Because if you know anything about filmmaking, they do like pages and it takes forever a day. So I was inspired by how SNL would cut their digital shorts. I was fortunate in 2011 and 2016 to work as a background performer, and then sort of working my way to being a writer's assistant on that show. And I would watch Andy Samberg and his team film these digital shorts on a Friday night. And as they were done filming, the data tech would dump the footage. They would be cutting in real time, so that when they were able to give Lauren and the EPs on that show the sort of final product within, under 24 hours. And this was like, it wasn't just one video. This was from multiple shoots. They were doing something on location on Friday in Long Island City, but then they were doing something in Manhattan at the same time. And it was just nuts. But like, it's all about the power of your team. So I made sure that my director of production and my director of creative operations, that they had a background in doing this stuff. Like my director of creative operations, him and I did improv and sketch comedy together. And we were used to doing really unfunny videos and cutting those and dumping those and trying to get, acting and writing gigs. So in terms of like the amount of time that we spent editing, just know too, like we had 10-minute videos, 20-minute videos, 30-minute videos. So shooting like 8 videos a day, we were rotating back and forth. When one was done during break, we would be cutting and setting things up, making sure that placement wise, everything was set up in, pre-production so that post-production wasn't as overwhelming. And we were able to knock out those videos. And that also included, all these like promo ads and stuff like that. So it's all about workflow, and it's all about as you alluded to, David, like the preparation and experience prior to that moment where I felt assured that I could set those expectations and deliver on them without failing.
So again, so many different things, so quickly, from a regular gym, to a cold gym, to a high-tech slide board, to no, we're going back to traditional slide boards for in-home use versus our gym use. And now, as I, mentioned to you earlier, you're selling the product, you have a high-quality partner producing them and branding them for you. And I saw one of them in the wild, a month ago, at an athletic facility. And then I told you my 14-year-old son comes running into me because he's done some of the Brrrn workouts at home. He's tried some of these slide board workouts for his athletic career. And he says, oh my God, my hockey training facility just bought a bunch of Brrrn boards, right? Totally independent. Jimmy didn't know my kid goes there. He doesn't know. Talk about that, selling to people in a group fitness, selling to people at home, and now selling to, professional training facilities. Right now, you're an equipment producer in a sense, selling to other business owners. So those are different customers. How have you guys how's that experience been? What have you guys learned about that?
Can you see the bags under my eyes? Can you tell that I'm extremely tired from all that? But I love it. I think it's so great. And again, going back to the roots with Mason, it's a lot easier to say, hey, I'm a former D1 athlete. Like there's a lot less dissonance when you walk through the door or when you're communicating with someone on the phone. They go, okay, you've been through something. You understand the need to have the right tools to help get these youth, collegiate and professional athletes to the next level. So that really did help. But I knew that like D2C, again, I think it's also being in great company with I say our neighbors, but like competition. What is Peloton doing well? What could they improve upon? What is Mir doing well? What could they improve upon? What gaps can we fill, right? And one of those gaps was like corporate wellness. And we realized, especially in the middle of the pandemic, businesses are trying to find any way to make their employees happy and healthy. And there was a huge opportunity with corporate wellness, not just with working alongside bigger companies and having them buy their employees' boards with our subscription, but we had to lean into the people that you didn't have to convince them, to get on a slide board. They've been using it, but they just haven't been using a good one. And so we talked to a gentleman that we got introduced from a gold medalist U.S. women's hockey player who coincidentally it was helping us with our direct, her side job is she works for this company called Klaviyo, which helps you with like email marketing and sort of Shopify, optimizes your stuff with Shopify. And I found out that I just Googled her because I love Googling people. And like on the phone, I'm like, wait, you're a gold medalist hockey player. And then we just started talking and I was like, hey, I want to give you a Brrrn board. Just here, you're incredible. And then she referred me to a gentleman who is the director of the youth development program for the Capitals. And he's the one that introduced me to the gentleman that runs the facility that your son trains at. And look, it's just like you do with it, again, giving something away for free, knowing that it's going to pay dividends somewhere along the line. And I couldn't have expected like those connections to happen. But to your point about how to balance it all, D2C, you're going to have a B2B angle with it because that's just another layer to help increase revenue for the business. So it's a different dialogue, a different sell conversation that you need to have, but it's an absolute necessity in order to scale specifically in the industry that we're in.
Excellent. And we've got some questions. We've got one, from Shayla. Just, I don't know if you can see that or if you want to read it. Just about kind of the cool at home versus cool in the studio, and what you think, how you made those choices.
Totally. I mean, look, the temperature experience is a face-to-face one. I mean, would I love for you to work out in front of your air conditioning? Absolutely. I think one, you'll lower your core body temperature and feel a lot better. Another hack you can do is to take a cold shower before you work out. You'll actually perform a lot better. You're not going to pull a muscle. That's a complete myth. But in terms of our at-home experience, I mean, look, we thought about changing the name because the pun Brrrn didn't really apply to the slide board, but people knew us from our slide experience, and we called it the Brrrn board. So instead of spending all this time to reintroduce ourselves to people, we wanted to pay homage to how we began this process, and that was with the Cool Temperature Company. So, you know, what we're doing is, I guess you could say Peloton-esque because it's like at home, but you know, we are a low-tech connected experience that allows people to have essentially a gym that can fit under your couch, and the temperature, the cool factor is how you feel once you're done with the workout, not necessarily the temperature in which you're doing the workout.
Yeah, and you know, look, this is, you know, I don't want to answer for you, but it is what it is. You have to adjust. The market changes. I do think, right, Brrrn works in terms of you're going to burn your legs out. That's for sure. Right?
That's another good one. Yeah.
My son got, I mean, I was telling Jimmy, my son did one of the workouts and he was down. Once he completed it, his legs were burning. That was for sure. So any other questions, you know, people want to put in the chat box, you know, and again, it is interesting, you know, Jimmy mentioned, you know, low tech, low space, low cost. I mean, where we are in well-being, I mean, that's part of the reason we've started this initiative. It's so diverse and broad. I'm sure a lot of you, I mean, have any of you can use your Zoom hand. I mean, have any of you used a slide board in the past? You know, have any of you gone to boutique fitness? Have any of you tried streaming at home in the last 12 months, even YouTube videos? You know, even the fact that there's a training facility that my kid goes to, those didn't exist 25 years ago when I played hockey. No way. There was no training facility there. And so that's how big the business of well-being is. Yeah. And so that's why we're doing this again, just showing you all these different angles. So when we ask a question, is it Peloton-esque? You know, Peloton's going to dominate the narrative for a while, just like Amazon still dominates e-commerce. When you talk about e-commerce, yet there's Shopify and Etsy and all these different niches and angles that play in there. So yeah, the gym that fits under your couch, exactly. And that's, you know, that's real. It matters if you're an apartment dweller, if everybody's working and living at home like we've been the last 12 months, and you don't have space like you might have a year ago when everyone left for the day. So a lot in there. And again, yeah, smart people are good with language. You got to everybody work on your communication skills. Read books, speak into YouTube, selfies, whatever. Any other thoughts or questions people have for Jimmy about, you know, arrange it? I mean, he's had some great experiences.
I want to say thank you, Shayla, for the compliment. That was very, I actually screenshot that, so I made my business partner feel bad that he's not getting compliments at this time because he's not on this call. I actually, would you guys like to see a sneak peek? We're literally filming live right now. Would you guys like to just take a quick peek at what we're doing?
Absolutely.
Let me show you really quickly. Safety first. Hold on. Go. All right, so this is our lobby. Right here, looks like a sort of ski lodge. These are all snowflakes under electron microscope, which is really interesting. All the amazing press that we were lucky to be in. These are the slide boards that we were talking about. This is our 6-foot board. This is our 5-foot board right there, the little guy. This is the fridge when we had the cool temp fridge that you can walk into. So now I'm going to show you, and we'll be really quiet, a live class that's happening right now.
Either the long part, the tall part, hold it here, breathe and stay. Good. Or bring the hand to the floor. Nice straight line from the middle finger all the way to the wrist. The bottom wrist. 4, 3, 2, opening up the shoulder. 1, press through strong feet. Reverse your triangle. Straight legs, reaching the arm up and over the head.
What do you think about that?
I mean, I've got a million comments. I'm not going to say anything,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that was right. Triangle pose. I've learned enough because of online, right? I mean, that's what's amazing. And I see James has a comment, right? If COVID wasn't here, we'd be going out to New York, right? We'd maybe go up there and take a class together, right? We'd see
Right.
it. But even the fact that, in those who take classes with us and come to our program, pre-COVID, we were talking about video production, and you just, unfortunately, you just have to be comfortable with it. You have to be comfortable shooting, speaking in the video, maybe even starting to edit a little bit. That's why those in my class know I start assigning videos. It's the new speaking and writing, but you got to add on to it now. So I'm glad, just to see real time that, when they pivoted, that became, like a lot of us, video became the tool, and still going.
And again, low tech. I mean, our production, that was a 3-camera setup with some lighting. That was our video village. That couch that you saw, some luxury building was getting rid of this brand new couch, and we had 2 wonky chairs, and my 2 the people behind the in village, they were like, I surprised them one day with this couch that didn't have bed bugs, thank goodness, but just we're having fun. I mean, Peloton's production facility is just absolutely massive because they do live classes, but we do on demand, and it works for us right now. By the end of this year, we'll have close to 500 plus videos, and we have a very, very exciting announcement in the next 2 weeks of a celebrity endorsement, and who's also an investor. So I can't wait to share that. But things take time, and yeah, clock is ticking, money runs out, but we're doing better with this pivot, with this business than we were with the brick and mortar. And so it's a blessing in disguise, and the narrative continues, and you're only as good as the people that you surround yourself with. So, I wouldn't be here without the hard work and the absolute, without the hard work and the passion of the people that I've hired to stand alongside me. They lift me up, and I know my late wife will be very happy to see that I didn't give up when it was time to quit. And I'm still trudging along, hoping to stay relevant. So,
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing. And I think, as someone who's now spent 4 years snooping around down there in the industry, I think you're doing more than just what you say, trudging along or limping along. And as, just the last thing I'll add on to what Jimmy said there, when you see that production, because I have been following Peloton, that's what they were 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Even I can see the difference in my 4 years with them. And I will tell you, they would admit it, but they now are at the point where they're purging older classes, meaning getting rid of the library. And I think part of the reason they're doing it is their own production has improved so much that they don't want all their new members seeing things that I was looking at 4 years ago, where it was like, whatever, no big deal, 1 camera, the music wasn't perfect, the outfits were not right, coordinated and branded. And so they're trying to, I don't want to say they want to forget that, but their level themselves is so much higher that I think they had to kind of flush that. I always joke that if you watch a TV show and it's successful, the second season, the people are better looking and have better wardrobes because they've been renewed. And then they have trainers start working with them. And, and all of a sudden, because money came in, the level goes up.
That's right.
If you watch it, and so that's what I think's happened with Peloton, and they're raising the bar for everybody.
Totally.
So it's exciting. Thank you so much for your time today. Like you saw, it's real time. You guys are producing. Thank you everyone for coming by. Make sure that you're on our mailing list. We'll touch you so you can hear what Brrrn is going to come out with in a couple weeks.
Very soon.
And we'll get some Brrrn boards going here at Mason, I think, once everything opens.
I hope so. No pressure, but yeah, if people want to see what we're about, our app is free for iOS and Android. Just type in Brrrn at home, BRRN at home. It's free until May 1st. And I'm giving 20% off to all Mason alumni for our product. So, I wouldn't be here without Mason. I'm so grateful to be in everybody's company. It's so exciting to think about where you are all at right now, and just the potential that has yet to be, actualized. And I'm here as a sounding board and as a colleague and as a friend. So just feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or LinkedIn. And yeah, super grateful for this opportunity, David. It's really nice to speak to everybody today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Have a great rest of the afternoon.
You're awesome. See you, team.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody. We will be emailing follow-up, some post-production of this video, as well as some other opportunities to get involved. We hope you have a great rest of the day and get involved with the rest of the Business of Wellbeing week. Thanks and be well.